Okay, my name is George Brugmans, and I come from the Netherlands. I live in Amsterdam, but I work in Rotterdam. Holland is a small country. And I'm the executive director of the architecture biennial in Holland. I think basically Albania has the same challenge as every country in this moment of time. We are in a very interesting moment in time. I'm an historian by training, so if I step back and say, okay, let's look at the last 10,000 years, something really strange is happening, which is that we're rapidly urbanizing. We are becoming another species. We are becoming an urban species. 50 years ago, about 5% of the world's population lived in cities. 50 years from now, almost 80% will live in cities, more or less. So we are doing something, building cities and becoming an urbanized species. And we don't exactly know how to do this. Ants know better how to build anthills than we know how to build cities. So we're learning by doing, we're doing by learning. And that's the challenge that Albania also has. See, I think with the way the world is going, urban development is the top priority. If we're all going to live in cities, urban development is, it's priority number one, politically, socially, culturally. And if 80% of us are going to live in cities, it means these cities have to be resilient, they have to be sustainable, and at the same time they have to perform economically. So in order to connect to the global economy, to the rest of the world, to give the country a better economic performance, it will have to concentrate on the Durrana region, on the metropolitan region. This region already produces more than 75% of GDP. I think it will go up to 90. The country will further urbanize. So the challenge is how to use the metropolitan region to boost the economy of the country as such and connect it to the rest of the world. So there are two ways to connect to the world. One is to go with the rules and to go with the standards and to become another normal country, but the world is full of normal countries and nobody's waiting for another normal country. If you can find a way of matching your distinctiveness and your capacity to do certain things in a certain way, again, maneuvering between the formal and the informal, but at the same time in an more organized situation, then you have a distinct advantage, and then you can turn your disadvantage as you perceive it into an advantage. And then you can add value to everything that you do, also in terms of the global economy. So I think Albania has to think of itself as central. In your history, you've always been on the margins of an empire. You've been on the margins of the Roman Empire, you've been on the margins of the Byzantium Empire, you've been at the margin of the Ottoman Empire, you've been at the margin of the Soviet, the Communist Empire, and now maybe you want to go and be at the margin of the EU. Don't. I mean, use the EU to your advantage, but don't be a normal country in the margin of the EU. Find your own voice and think of yourself as the Singapore of this part of the world. So, you may get away with it. Would be great. Would be much more interesting than be another EU country. But don't do things too quickly. Take your time. Build capacity. We are here as foreigners, and yes, we have certain ideas, but don't ask us to bring solutions. Ask us to help you with our expertise, if you need it, to find your own solutions. So build capacity while you make use of us. So don't do big competitions and ask foreigners to come up with solutions. But take your time. Set up an atelier, a workshop situation, a permanent dialogue, organize a lot of exchange, because you're not the only one having this problem. So set up an exchange of best practices, the exchange of know-how, expertise, etc., etc. Learn by doing, do by learning. Take your time. We've been talking about the importance of urban development, and I think urban development needs a sort of know-how, a sort of expertise that we don't really have yet. We do not have the profession of urban developer yet, nowhere in the world. We have architects, we have planners, we have economists, we have people that know everything about engineering, about the ecology, and so on, financing. These are all very important things when you talk about urban development. So architects have only a modest role to play, but an important role. Why? Because they bring design, and design can be very important. And by this I mean that don't use architects as designers in the sense of, hey, here's the brief, please design it, but bring in design in an earlier stage of the process. Bring in design when you are still thinking about what exactly is the problem. How can we design our questions? How can we bring in the force of design in how we look at the situation, and then use design? So, the architect as a problem solver, not drawing right away, but as a problem solver, somebody who thinks with you, together with the economists, etc., in teams, and make design, the force of design, the imagination that design can bring, the creativity, use it as a force in this development strategy, as part of this development strategy. We still have to build houses. We still have to create beauty. I mean, even if architects are involving themselves in infrastructure, infrastructure can also be beautiful. So you can build roads, and you can build roads. Some look ugly, some look a lot better. So the aesthetics that architects and designers can bring in would still be very important. I mean, let's not forget about beauty.